working to connect a region of over 600 new bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus, and today I'm being joined by our EBC correspondent from the beautiful, picturesque island nation of Maldives. Hello, Steffi.
Hi, Alma, and I'm Steffi Dihuan, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. A radical cleric linked to the deadly Bali bombings was freed from prison early Friday, according to Indonesian authorities, stirring grief and anger among victims nearly 30 years or 20 years after Indonesia's worst terror attack.
Well, unang-una po,
Malacanang said President Duterte assures justice for the family of Christine Dacernas following her controversial death.
Natapos yung kasong yan at ganyan din po ang pangako ni President.
Vietnam suspended flights from countries with cases of new COVID-19 variants.
A yellow robot dog called Spot, which found fame online for dancing to hit song Uptown Funk and during the New Year as well, has been deployed to patrol a Singapore park and ensure people observe social distancing.
A radical cleric linked to the deadly Bali bombings was freed from prison early today, according to Indonesian authorities, stirring grief and anger among victims nearly 20 years after Indonesia's worst terror attack. Abu Bakar Bashir, 82, is considered the spiritual leader of militant group Jemaah Islamiyah, the Islamic network responsible for the 2002 Bali terror attack that killed more than 200 people, most of them foreign tourists. The firebrand preacher had completed an unrelated jail term for helping fund militant training in conservative Aceh province, but he has long been suspected of involvement in the Holiday Island bombings, Indonesia's worst terror attack. Bashir was expected to return to his hometown Solo City in Java later Friday. Originally sentenced to 15 years in 2011 for funding militants, his term was later cut due to regular sentence reductions handed to most prisoners in Indonesia. Bashir had been previously jailed over the Bali nightclub bombings, but that conviction was quashed on appeal. He has repeatedly denied involvement in the attacks, and his exact role in the blast has long been the subject of debate. Bashir's lawyers had appealed for his release, citing his age and risk of contracting COVID-19 in the Southeast Asian nation's notoriously overcrowded prison system. Bashir has refused to denounce or renounce his extremist views in exchange for leniency. 2 years ago, plans to grant him early release on humanitarian grounds sparked a backlash at home and in Australia. Dozens of Australians were killed in the Bali attacks, and the early release plan was shelved. News of Bashir's release brought back the horror of the memories for Jan Lachinsky, 51. He was drinking with friends at the Sari Club before flying back to Australia. Hours later, 5 of his friends were among the hundreds killed as a string of huge bombs ripped through the district.
And I know one thing that he will do. He will crave the media attention that he will get on Friday. He will have a huge gathering. He will put his hand up and will start waving with a big smile on his face. And that's what's going to hurt every person that was impacted by all the terror attacks in Bali. That's what's going to hurt the most. It was awful at the time, knowing that they were gone. Horrible. It hurts me a lot. I wanted to see justice be done. So my journey of healing was returning back to Bali, as awful as it was, seeing that dreadful bomb sites. It was horrible. I thought this was going to be ultimate closure for me because I thought, oh, yeah, 15 years, we're not going to see him walk out of jail. And now we're going to see him walk out of jail, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, because not just the horror of the memories come back, but number two, it's the fear factor. He's going to walk out with a hero's welcome. And the first thing he's going to do, he's not going to go home. He's going to go to a mosque and start preaching all his religious vitriol of hate. I mean, I think Scott Morrison should be proactive and pick up the phone call and to say, look, okay, this guy's served his sentence, but make sure he is watched. Make sure he doesn't have access to the tools of the trade. These tools of the trade are simply a microphone, a megaphone, a mosque or a church, and practicing his hate speeches. In their own way suffering. There were still people, even next week, having operations for their burns. People are still suffering. A lot of people are going through their hurts. Every year we hate October because it brings back those painful memories, going to reunions.
The government's proposed tripartite agreement with local government units, or LGUs, and vaccine manufacturers has been approved by President Rodrigo Duterte, said Secretary Carlito Garbes Jr., National Policy Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer, on Thursday night. We are therefore pleased that when we submitted our proposal to President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to purge tripartite agreements between LGUs, national government, and vaccine manufacturers, he immediately approved it, Galvez said in a statement. Galvez said the initiative is similar to the repatriate agreement signed between the national government, the private sector, and pharmaceutical companies in November 2020. Galvez said the repatriate agreement is meant to providing unified and synchronized efforts among the government, LGUs, and vaccine developers to ensure the acquisition of sufficient doses of COVID-19 vaccine for the country. The national government, he said, will provide necessary resources to help LGUs purchase equitable vaccines for their constituents. Galvez cited the significant role of LGUs in the upcoming complementation of the nationwide vaccine program once COVID-19 vaccines become available.
Proliferation of the highly contagious novel coronavirus strain, first detected in Britain, has now been confirmed in 41 countries and territories, according to the World Health Organization in its COVID-19 weekly epidemiological update on Tuesday evening. According to the WHO bulletin, over the past week, from December 28 to January 3, the number of people infected with COVID-19 increased globally by 4,035,226, and the number of deaths by 76,017. Most of the new infections were detected in the Americas, 1,935,621. Europe is in second place, which is 1,553,332, and Southeast Asia, which is third, which is 208,592. On December 14, the United Kingdom's Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, said British scientists had identified a new coronavirus strain that might be to blame for high infection rates in southeastern England. The South African authorities on December 21 said the second wave of the pandemic was due to a mutated coronavirus detected in the south of the country in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, Eastern Cape Province on the Indian Ocean. Local scientists say the new strain harms mostly young people.
Preparasyon na gagawin natin. Sa atin po, ako po ay nakakasiguro sa ating...
After a 6-week lockdown, Cambodia has now started reopening schools and resumed Cambodia's to a rare cluster of cases in November. Cambodia put in a place of range of restrictions after rare outbreak of community transmission linked to a 56-year-old woman who had traveled to the country's two biggest cities since November 20. On Monday, students wearing masks lined up for temperature checks and hand washing before being allowed to enter the sovereign Phnom Primary School in the capital, Phnom Penh. While private schools have started reopening this week, students at public schools are due to return next week. At the Chulsleng Genocide Museum, a former Khmer Rouge torture center and prison in the capital, staff and tuk-tuk motorcycle taxi drivers awaited the arrival of visitors as they opened.
Now, also this week, Singapore began a coronavirus vaccination campaign, with a nurse receiving the first jab, making it among the first Asian nations to roll out inoculations. The Minister for Health, Gan Kim Yong, highlighted that vaccination is a milestone in the fight against COVID-19, and the priority is to ensure the vaccines are safe and effective. Let's listen in.
Today we are commencing our vaccination program, starting with our healthcare worker staff at the National Center for Infectious Diseases. This is an important milestone in our journey, in our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination is a very important strategy, and over time we will ramp up over the next few weeks and next few months, and we will begin to extend to healthcare workers in other public healthcare institutions, including private hospitals and so on.
I'm very thankful that I'm being vaccinated first. I'm feeling fine. I don't have any reaction. So it's just like an end bite to me.
I'm feeling okay after the jab. There's no side effects felt after taking the vaccination.
I'm feeling more protected. So with our mask, hand hygiene, physical distancing and all, this vaccine is probably the last layer of protection for each one of us. So in that sense, I do feel more confident now.
The city-state, which has suffered a mild outbreak, became the first country in Asia to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine earlier this month, and its program kicked off with healthcare workers. Nurse Sarah Lim, as we saw earlier, 46, whose work includes screening suspected COVID-19 patients, was the first to be immunized. More than 30 staff from the center received the first dose of the two-shot vaccine on Wednesday, and they will get the second one next month. After healthcare workers, the city-state will vaccinate the elderly and then the rest of the population. The government expects to have enough vaccines for all 5.7 million people in the city by the third quarter of 2021, with the voluntary vaccine free for all Singaporeans and long-term residents.
President Rodrigo Duterte has threatened to sack airport staff after he received reports that people are allowed easy entry into the country despite strict protocols regarding travel bans. Authorities are temporarily banning the entry of foreign travelers from countries and territories that have confirmed cases of the new COVID-19 variant linked to the recent surge of coronavirus cases in England.
Now, there are reports that some people are skipping, na nakakalusot sila with the help of airport personnel at sa mga barko. I say this now, as I have said it before, do not do it. Kasi mayayari talaga kayo. You do it by allowing unauthorized travel when all of us are really worried of containing the contamination na control in and out. Almost every country now are controlling the entry and the departure of their citizens. Hindi lang tayo. Mga Pilipino, hindi lang tayo. So, do not go into this rigmarole of, magsabi ka doon, tapos na, ganun. Or you bring your fake certificates. Yan talaga ang maghanap kayo ng gulo. At yung mga taga-airport, alam mo, hindi ba ninyo nahalata na lahat ng immigration personnel dyan, but 42 of them, at marami pang iba ang na-dismiss sa trabaho. Gusto ninyo ulitin ko yan? This can only happen with the not even cooperation, but with the handiwork of maybe a few, not all, people in the airports, making it easy for somebody to travel, to skip the swabbing and everything. Sino bang may gusto nito? Itong incoming passengers papasok sa Pilipinas galing foreign countries, quarantine talaga, mandatory 14 days. Lahat ng countries dito sa mundong ito, yan ang ginagawa. Kasi ito is to safeguard. So, pag may pumasok isa dito, isa lang. Look, kayong mga taga-health dyan, mga taga-quarantine, pagka may na huli lang ako na isa, I will, lahat kayo, palitan ko.
The Philippine ambassador to China, Chito Santa Romana, said that last week the Chinese government had already announced that it had given provisional approval for general use of the vaccine made by Sinopharm. He also said that Sinopharm and Sinovac of China will seek clearance for emergency use authorization of their COVID-19 vaccines from the Food and Drug Administration Philippines this week.
Month before the New Year weekend, last Thursday, the Chinese government announced that it had granted provisional approval for general use to a vaccine produced by Sinopharm. This is actually a state-owned pharmaceutical company, and its vaccine has been used for emergency use since July, together with Sinovac. Now, Sinopharm and Sinovac have both applied for this general use approval. Sinopharm was the first one to get it last Thursday, but we're in touch with both companies, Sinopharm and Sinovac. Both companies, Sinovac has also told us, the Philippine Embassy here in Beijing, that it is expecting, it has filed for the same application for general use approval, and it expects there will be an announcement by the government sometime this month, most likely around the middle of this month. Ang nangyari ngayon dito is meron ng approval for general use in China ang Sinopharm vaccine. Yung specific vaccine ito, yung ginawa ng China National Biotech Group, CNBG vaccine, no? Yun ang na-approve. Sinovac has a pending application, and they informed us that they expect to hear from the authorities sometime this month, hopefully by the middle of January. The other thing I want to add, our embassy is in touch with these two companies, of course, and we try to facilitate their contact with IATF and if there is any information that's needed. We asked them when they will file for EUA sa FDA sa Pilipinas, no? Apparently, their plan right now, according to them, is that they hope to file in the next few days. Sometime this week, they will file their EUA application with FDA in the Philippines.
Yarwadi. The stadium once roared with fans during Myanmar's top football games, but now bustles with workers wrapped in protective gear who are battling the coronavirus pandemic. The Iyarikwedi Center Clinic was hastily built in September when case numbers started to surge in a country with one of the weakest healthcare systems in the world. From just several hundred in mid-August, reported infections have since climbed to nearly 130,000 with more than 2,700 deaths. The new hospital might be makeshift, but it is one of the best equipped in the country, with 1,000 beds and 125 intensive care units, all monitored from a modern control room. Plants and cherry signs wish patients back to full health. The medical workers and volunteers have ping-pong tables to use in breaks and are able to exercise on the adjacent football pitch at the Tuwana Stadium. Fewer than 200 patients have died at the center from some 10,000, a survival rate that has meant the hospital and its sister center in Mandalay have become training hubs for medical staff from across the country. Number of new cases have shown signs of trending downward, but civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi warned against some complacency in her New Year's address.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Tuloy-tuloy ang saya sa 2021 dahil hatid ng Net25 para sa inyo ang pinakabagong game show na talaga namang mapapakanta ka sa sarap. It's singing time na! Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. Dito lang yan sa Net25.
It's singing time!
All right, to Thailand now, where the country is about to begin its vaccination program. Let's find out when. Here's Cristel Di Marugo joining us live from Bangkok. Hello, Cristel.
Hello, Alma, and good afternoon to all our viewers around the world. Here are the latest updates here in Thailand. Thailand government has planned 3 phases of COVID-19 vaccination for citizens. The chief of the Disease Control Department said on Thursday that the first phase will cover 1 million people in vulnerable groups from February to April. Director General OPAS Karn Kawin-Pong said that 2 million doses would involve the first phase and will be used to lessen the rate of severe illness and death from COVID-19, as well as to maintain the national health system. From February to April, the government will set 2 million dose vaccination. It would be for 80,000 medical personnel and health volunteers, 20,000 disease control workers, 900 people aged 60 and over, and people with chronic diseases. He also stated that the first recipients would be the following: Samut Sakhon Province, Greater Bangkok, and the Eastern Province of Chonburi, Rayong, Chantanaburi, and Trat, which had high levels of infection and had been declared maximum control zones. Medical personnel who had contact with COVID-19 patients are most likely to be vaccinated, while disease control workers include officials at border checkpoints, disease control areas along the border, and field hospitals. The second phase would be given in May and June. It will include 26 doses to be given to people in vulnerable groups nationwide to protect the national economy, society, and security, while the third phase is set for later this year to early next year. This would involve vaccinating enough of the general population to develop herd immunity and stop the spread of COVID-19 at community level. With that, Alma, each person would need 2 doses, which is 4 weeks apart. It would take 1 to 2 months for the vaccine to have full effect, Dr. Opa said. He also added that COVID-19 cases were tending to slow down while recoveries were increasing. And that's the latest news here in Thailand. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Crystal, for your updates there. Stay safe.
Thank you. Reporting live from Bangkok, this is Crystal Di Marukot, and we live in interesting times.
Next, the Armed Forces of the Philippines on Friday said communist terrorist groups are behind the 532 incidents of destruction of civilian-owned property since 2010. In a statement, the AFP Public Affairs Office Chief Navy Captain Jonathan Zata said these incidents were included in the report submitted by the AFP Human Rights Office, or HRO, to the Commission on Human Rights on Thursday. He also said the destruction of property was done mostly by arson by the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, National Democratic Front, or CPP, and PANDF. Data collected by the AFP HRO from field units provided a factual and verifiable basis for the report. The year 2017 saw the highest number of incidents at 87, followed by 73 incidents in 2014, 64 in 2018, 58 in 2015, 53 in 2016, 47 in 2020, 43 in 2010, 38 in 2012, 33 in 2013, 30 in 2011, and 6 in 2019. Majority of the incidents were recorded in regions in Mindanao, Caraga, 107, Davao Region, 89, Northern Mindanao, 63, and Soc-Sargen, 55. Meanwhile, no incident of destruction of private property by the communist terrorists was recorded in Metro Manila. The figures which had been recorded are expected to rise as AFP units continue their inquiry and tender reports on the activities of non-state armed groups. AFP HRO Chief Colonel Joel Alejandro Naknak said the CPP, NPA, NDF's acts of destroying civilian property has shown a nationwide pattern of organized, continuing, and systematic scheme as part of their violent struggle.
Nearly 100 Rohingya smuggled from Myanmar's conflict-scarred Rakhine state were arrested in a raid in Yangon, police announced Thursday, with authorities saying they had been headed to Malaysia as part of a trafficking network. The flight of the Rohingya captured international headlines in 2017 after a military crackdown in western Rakhine State sent almost 750,000 fleeing across the border to Bangladesh. Members of the stateless minority group have long faced discrimination in Myanmar, where they are denied freedom of movement and citizenship and lack access to work, healthcare, and schools. With the remaining language in camps that rights groups have described as apartheid-like, many choose to embark on treacherous routes with human smugglers to reach Malaysia and Indonesia. The latest smuggling operation was uncovered by Yangon Police Wednesday, who raided two houses in Swipitia Township and discovered 99 Rohingya. Police said authorities were first alerted to a suspicious man who wasn't able to speak Burmese fluently. They followed him to a house where they discovered the others. No smugglers were reportedly arrested. Myanmar, which has long maintained the 2017 crackdown was necessary to root out Rohingya militants, now faces charges of genocide at the UN Stop Court. Faced with widespread discrimination and little chance to build a viable livelihood, many of the Rohingya trapped in squad camp are willing to pay around $1,500 to traffickers, life-saving for some, in order to get out of Myanmar.
Here in the Philippines, Malacanang said President Duterte has assured justice for the family of Christine Dacera following her controversial death. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque said the president will not let criminals get away without being punished. Let's listen in.
Well, unang-una po, ang pangako naman po ng presidente magkakamit po ang katarungan sa pamilyang Dacera. Malalaman po natin ang katotohanan. At sa administrasyon po ni Presidente, dahil siya ay abogado at dati pang piskal, hindi niya hahayaan na mga kriminal ay hindi po mapaparusahan. Kung maalala nyo nga po, napakatagal ng kaso kung Maguindanao Massacre. Kinailangan maging presidente si Presidente Duterte bago natapos yung kasong yan. At ganyan din po ang pangako ni Presidente sa pamilyang Dacera. Pero hindi po tayo ngayon po pwedeng magsalita dahil meron pa pong ongoing investigation. No? At kaugnay nitong investigation nito, hindi lang po PNP mag-iimbestiga, pati ang National Bureau of Investigation po ngayon ay mag-iimbestiga na. Huwag po kayong mag-alala kung yung piskal ay nagdesisyon na kinakailangan magkaroon ng regular na preliminary investigation. Yan po ay makakabuti dahil ang gusto ng piskal ay magkaroon ng additional ng ebidensya ng saggayon kapag naisampa sa kaso, dire-diretso na po sa Muntinlupa ang mga magiging akusado. So yung ginawa po ng piskal, sang-ayon po yan sa ating Rules of Criminal Procedure, sang-ayon po yan sa rules ng ating piskalya, at ang layon po ito ay para makonvict beyond reasonable doubt yung mga suspect sa karumal-dumal na pagpatay na ito.
Dacera was found lifeless in a bathtub of a hotel in Makati City after celebrating New Year's Eve with friends. She died in a hospital. Makati Police Chief Colonel Harold Depositar said the initial report of the cause of death was a ruptured aortic aneurysm, which may be caused by various factors such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, infection, or sudden traumatic injury. However, there are other factors at play as Dacera had lacerations, contusions, and scratches on her body and lacerations and sperm in her genitals. On Tuesday, the PNP said the identification of suspects was enough to consider Dacera's case as case solved. Makati City Prosecutor General Ben Malcontento on Wednesday ordered the release of 3 suspects in Dacera's death after finding that police had submitted insufficient evidence. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara earlier said the NBI will be working closely with the police in connection with Dacera's case, and the hearing for the preliminary investigation was set for January 13.
Sympathy and support from residents here poured in for the family of the late flight attendant Christine Angela Dacera, whose body was flown home on the Thursday morning, a week after she was found dead in a hotel room in Makati City. The remains of the 23-year-old, who authorities and family members believe was a victim of sexual abuse before she was killed, arrived at the City International Airport past 10 a.m. aboard Philippine Airlines Flight 453 from Manila. The body was immediately brought to the Memorial Chapel. Sharon Rose, Christine's mother, said they are overwhelmed with the support extended by residents, including local government officials, amid their ordeal. Thank you for adding to our strength. I am sure my daughter wants to also say hi to all of you, she told reporters. She also thanked PAL Express, Christine's employer, for its support. Sharon, who came home on the same flight after earlier flying to Manila to personally attend to her daughter's body, reiterated their resolve to seek justice for Christine. She said they will not stop until all those behind her daughter's death are jailed and convicted for the crime. Christine, whose family is from Barangay San Isidro, was found unconscious in the bathtub of her rented room at the City Garden Grand Hotel in Makati around noon on January 1. Hour after joining a New Year's Eve party with some friends. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the Makati Medical Center with a cause initially ruled as ruptured aortic aneurysm. Based on the examination by the Southern Police District Crime Laboratory Office. Sharon said they have reason to believe that there was foul play in Christine's death, which the Makati City Police and Philippine National Police Chief General Debolo Binac already declared as a case of rape slave. She said they hope that the truth will come out in the independent autopsy in the next few days. Sharon did not disclose the details of the planned autopsy, but a close family source said it was not yet done and still being arranged.
In other news, this week, a French-Irish teenager with learning difficulties died by misadventure after disappearing in the Malaysian jungle on a family holiday, and no one else was involved, according to the ruling of the coroner. The mother of Nora Quarin, watching proceedings online, just bowed her head as the verdict was delivered, with the coroner also saying there was no sign the 15-year-old was murdered or sexually assaulted. Let's listen in.
So the, the verdict is misadventure, which means that on the balance of probabilities, according to the coroner, she went out on her own and subsequently got lost in the abandoned palm oil plantation, right? Because she was very tired over a long journey, 19 hours journey, the travel, the jet lag. So she came down the spiral staircase on her own, looking for her parents, and wandered out of the main door, and then got lost in the dense forest outside, and was finally found in the abandoned palm oil plantation.
The teen's body was discovered after a massive hunt through the rainforest following her disappearance from a resort outside Kuala Lumpur in 2019. Police insisted there was no foul play, and an autopsy conducted in Malaysia found that she probably starved and died of internal bleeding after days in the jungle. But her parents thought she was abducted, saying the teen would never have climbed out of the window of the chalet where they were staying in the dead of the night, as authorities believe. The coroner took 2 hours to deliver the verdict, going through the testimony from over 40 witnesses that was presented during the inquest from late August to December, as well as saying there was no evidence to support the theories of homicide or sexual assault. She decided against an open verdict, something which the teen's family had pushed for. During the inquest, the teen's parents said they heard mysterious muffled noises, coming from the accommodation the night of the schoolgirl's disappearance, fueling their belief she was snatched. Her parents, who testified via video link from Britain, painted a different picture, strongly criticizing authorities for their response to their daughter's disappearance. The 5-hectare or 12-acre resort is next to a patch of thick jungle and in the foothills of a mountain range. The teen had a condition known as holoprosencephaly, where the brain fails to develop normally. She had limited verbal communication and could only write a few words. She also attended a school for young people with learning difficulties.
Also this week, 2 Indonesian militants linked to a 2019 church blast in the Philippines have been shot dead by police, authorities said Wednesday, as officers arrested scores of pro-Islamic State radicals.
Pangalawang sumabog. Ito na, sa tapat mismo, ang pangalawang pagsabog. Nandito ako sa tapat mismo.
The shooting came as Indonesia's counter-terrorism squad, Densus 88. They did a hideout of extremist group Jama Ansharut Daulah in Suwales Islands, Makassar City, they said. 2 suspects were gunned down when they resisted arrest and attacked officers. Police said, adding that a 3rd suspect suffered gunshot injuries and was being treated in hospitals. Another 17 militants were detained. Later Wednesday, police said the 2 dead suspects were involved in financing the Philippines' worst terror attack in years, which killed 21 and injured scores more in 2019. In early 2019, 2 explosions ripped through a Catholic church on the Philippines' Muslims majority island of Jolo, killing worshippers at Sunday Mass and security forces, raising fears about growing links between militants in Southeast Asia. ISIS claimed responsibility for the cathedral blast, saying 2 suicide bombers detonated explosive belts.
In a Laging Handa public briefing, the Department of Public Works and Highways Secretary Mark Villar discussed the opening of the new Skyway Stage 3 on January 14. The Skyway aims to reroute more than 55,000 vehicles per day. This is part of the government's EDSA decongestion program, which will help to solve the heavy traffic flow. There in EDSA, let's listen in.
Ang Skyway, at ito po ay bahagi po ng EDSA decongestion program ng ating Pangulo. Alam naman po natin na umpisa pa lang isa yan sa mga bagay na gustong gawin ni Presidente na ma-decongest na ang EDSA. At pag na-open na po ito, magiging less po ang number of vehicles. Napakalaking bagay dahil siguro ang estimate namin minimum 55,000 cars per day ang mawawala po sa EDSA. Kaya napakalaking bagay. Last year na open po yung Harbor Link. Ngayon naman po itong ang Skyway. Ang susunod po yung mga bridges across Pasig na makakapawas din sa traffic sa EDSA. January 14, full opening na po yung main line ng Skyway. Sa ngayon po kasi, 2 lanes lang ang nagagamit. So hindi pa rin nararamdaman yung full effect ng Skyway at hindi pa rin tapos yung mga rampa. Pagdating ng Jan 14, magagamit na yung buong width ng highway. Napakalaking bagay dahil ito na po yung solusyon ni Presidente. Isa po ito, malaking bahagi po ng solusyon sa EDSA. At nakakatuwa naman at sa administrasyon ni President Duterte ay na-solve ang problema ng EDSA na ilang dekada na po. Diba? Ngayon lang po nagkaroon ng ng programa para ma-solve at makikita na po natin. Ngayon pa lang, mararamdaman na po natin medyo lumuluwag ng EDSA. Lalo na po pagdating ng Jan 14 at fully operational na yung main line ng Skyway Stage 3.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian on Thursday said he will file resolution to look into how banks are responding to incidents of credit card fraud.
Pala ay nararanasan din ng ibang mga kasama natin at kababayan natin. Kaya sabi ko, mabuti nang magkaroon ng isang formal investigation, hindi lang para sa akin, para po sa mga nabiktima, para po mahanap natin kung sino po talaga ang gumagawa ko nito at mahintunay yung pagbibiktima. Pero dito sa naranasan naman natin, may tatlong aral po kung napulot. Unang-unang aral ay kulang po yung ginagawa ng mga bangko at ng BSP pagdating sa consumer protection. Alam ko, gumagamit sila ng mga bagong teknolohiya pero kulang pa. Dahil nalalampasan po sila ng mga ganitong scammers at ganitong mga hackers. So dapat mas mabilis at mas innovative yung gagawin po ng mga bangko at ng BSP. At pangalawang aral, marami talaga nabibiktima dahil nga itong mga scammers nangunguna at mas alam nila kung saan yung butas at saan sila pwedeng pumasok. Tulad po sa nangyari po sa atin, itong tao ay nagpanggap na siya po si Senator Duterte. Pinalitan niya po yung cellphone number, nakuha niya yung OTP. Kung nakuha niya yung OTP, nag-order na po siya ng 1 million worth of items. Pero natuklasan ko, Atty. Guzman, hindi pala matakot ng tao kung hindi manginginom. Dahil 1 million na alcohol ang in-order niya. Hindi ko nga alam paano niya uubusin mo yun. Pero ang suspetso ko dahil alcohol yung binili niya, ibebenta niya rin ito dahil madalis po benta yung alcohol. At pangatlong aral na natuklasan ko, talagang dapat ingatan mo natin yung ating mga credit card information. Kung nakuha mo natin yung billing mo natin, bayaran at i-shred na. Dahil nandoon po lahat ng informasyon, yung credit limit, yung credit card number. Minsan, pinapatong natin kung saan-saan, pag napulot po yan, problema ho ka. Kampante po ako na mahuhuli ko sila at matitigilin natin itong mga modus na pinagagawa ko nila. Kaya kung nanonood sila, makikita na lang po tayo sa senda dito. Yan ang
All right, Steph, thank you very much. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining me today, and you have a great weekend.
Yes, and that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today here in ASEAN in Focus. This is Stephanie Huwan, your EBC Maldives Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
We'll see you back on Monday. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you.